Welcome to Growing E-commerce. I'm your host, Mike Ryan of Smarter E-commerce, also known as SMEC. Today, I'm joined by Stefan Bures, founder and CEO of Metoda. That's a company providing data products and services for Amazon advertising. We talk about the history of Amazon ads in terms of what's on offer and how performance has developed. And he introduces us to DSP link-out campaigns. These use Amazon audiences to drive traffic to your website. I really love that. We talk about retail readiness and product segmentation and some patterns that Stefan has identified on both the consumer side and the advertiser side before and during key promotional dates. That could be the Prime Day events or holidays like Black Friday. It's really a very full agenda. So let's get into it. So, Stefan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, too.
Absolutely. Would you get us started with a quick introduction? What are your skills? What themes interest you?
Yes, of course. So my name is Stefan. I'm one of the founders of Metoda, and I do this now for more than 11 years. Asking about my skills, this is really a complex question, I would say. I would classify myself as a nerd. Not maybe a tech nerd, but more on the business or data side. Mm-hmm. I really love data. I really love e-commerce. And I have another passion that's probably also more the topic of today, and this is performance marketing.
Absolutely. Well, I consider myself a nerd too, so you're in good company.
And I would agree, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah.
Working with you on the last webinar.
Yeah, I'll take it as a compliment.
Absolutely.
You know, geeks are in, but I'm not a geek. I'm a nerd. That's the real deal.
Yeah.
So, you just mentioned Metoda. Been working on this company for 11 years. That's incredible. So, I mean, maybe you could tell us a bit about that because, like, now you're an Amazon specialist, and I don't know, was Amazon always your main thing, or did it have roots in kind of a different space? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, we actually didn't start with Amazon at all. So when we started the company, we saw that Amazon is winning the European markets pretty quickly. So they started in this more or less EU5 context, and Germany was a very big and important market many, many years ago. And we saw that they have quite a unique strength, because they use data in a very good way. So they, from the very beginning on, they use their price intelligence, their price automation, and lots of algorithms to basically stay ahead of the competition. And I remember back then, lots of the old classical retailers in the German markets, they had no price automation in place, nothing like that at all in mind. So they simply set prices, I don't know when, in the beginning of the when they listed the products, and basically then the prices stayed the same over a very long time, which is still true for some brick and mortar businesses, I would say. And we saw this, and we simply started with a very idealistic mindset. We wanted to help the retail industry to become competitive with Amazon. So we wanted to fuel retailers with data for price intelligence, for price automation. We wanted to also add more data or provide more data to retailers, like for sourcing purposes, because we saw that Amazon is heavily using data for spotting the right products and for also doing basically the initial the price setup, for also calculating stock amounts that they should basically order. And we simply wanted to support the retail industry, and that was the start.
Yeah, thanks for that that introduction. And I think that's a really important mission, because I have mixed feelings about Amazon, and it takes this kind of cross-border e-commerce thing to quite an extreme. Particularly, it's imported a lot of sellers from all over the world, and I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for kind of helping enable local players against a huge presence like that. And the topic of pricing is interesting too. I mean, as you mentioned, in offline retail, you still like that's sort of the that's sort of the history of how Amazon was started to differentiate. Because like in an offline space, you have real shelves, and you actually have to change the price labels like on the shelves and stuff like that.
True.
And you're constrained by space and physics, and Amazon really imagined a digital shelf, and dynamic repricing is one of those things that's now there are electronic labels in stores, in some stores and stuff like that, but still many not. But yeah, Amazon really just kind of saw the possibilities when you remove constraints in a digital environment. Now, Amazon has evolved a lot over the years, and your company as well, as I guess. So like, what would you say has been kind of the biggest moves or changes to Amazon over the past years, and how have you adapted to that?
I think the biggest real evolution on Amazon's side is that they evolved from being now basically being the biggest and largest retailer in the Western world, or online retailer, to also become one of the most important ad platforms. And we saw that in 2017. And that was more or less also the start where we decided to focus to work also with Amazon. Because back then I remember, so I told you in the beginning that my background, one of the favorite topics that I have is performance marketing. I also worked in performance marketing area before I started Metoda. And I saw the potential that Amazon is having when they also become an ad platform. So first of all, there's the search ads. That's quite interesting. I'm not sure if they started with the search ads or had DSP in parallel in place already. But they in 2017, there was quite an interesting time because we saw Amazon would really massively grow in the search ad area. And we decided to support that with a artificial intelligence, you would call today. So with a full automation for Amazon for sponsored ads, because out of my experience and out of the past, working in Google Ads, for example, on Google Ads topics, I saw that managing campaigns is really hard work, taking lots of time. And we felt that Amazon or the e-commerce in general is actually the perfect spot to fully automate advertising here, because you have all the data at hand. So you have the conversion data at hand. You have you see competitor data. If we are also scraping lots of data, so we know who is potentially bidding on a keyword, who is appearing organically on a keyword. And back then we simply went out and said we can build a perfect tool that is taking all this context information and data, and then fully automating the process of Amazon advertising. That is how we started with. And I go back to the question. I feel that the biggest change in Amazon's, let's say, past 10 years of evolution was really focusing on becoming a real ad platform as well.
Yeah, I'm not an Amazon expert, but just as an observer, I think that tracks. And one of the reasons I brought you on, like this podcast, I've got a background in automating Google Ads, so kind of parallel trajectory in some ways, but I don't want this podcast to become like a Google Ads podcast or something like that. So thanks for coming on and giving us a chance to talk about Amazon ads a bit. I think something that's so unique about that, and you were describing it, is it is in some ways this more open environment. There's this vast amount of data that compared to Google or Meta, which are quite closed environments, you can kind of size a whole category or size a market based on Amazon data. There is a really impressive amount of data that is accessible or available. So I think that's something that's really cool about it. But let's dig into it a bit. Like how's the platform developing? You mentioned search ads, and you mentioned DSP, what is their offering shape like, and what are their sort of unique selling propositions for this ad platform?
I think what makes them unique is, I mean, you can that's very logical, I think. So Amazon is so deeply understands the consumers and the consumer side, and the whole customer journey, basically, that I feel they are really superior when it comes to all these consumer data in the end. And they more and more make this simply accessible to advertisers. And I mean, the start with basically Amazon ads, or Amazon advertising as it was called back then, was making their search available to advertisers in the end. So the Amazon search. It's very similar to how Google, by the way, developed, because they also started with their search and started to give this to advertisers to improve their visibility there. And I think this is also logical. And because Amazon back then was frequently named as the top number one, I guess, product search, right, in e-commerce, because people, even if they were Amazon customers or not, they simply started to search, to look for products on Amazon, because they found and still find all these reviews that they are very interested in before they're making a purchase decision. And so it was logical that they started with the search. And this search is now also, I mean, they added more ad placements to the search and around the search. So I think they're pretty well set up there by now. And what is now happening is that they also make their audience data available to advertisers more and more. And this is what we feel a really interesting trend, because we spoke about the audience. So Amazon should know most about consumers if you compare it to all other ad platforms. And now they make this great audience knowledge, available to advertisers. And I feel this is the new big thing that we will talk about in the next years. So, and this is the DSP.
Yeah, the DSP. So yeah, definitely. And that's right. You know, product search is a big part of their advertising and their whole proposition. And we see that kind of wave of product search and advertise, like kind of monetizing product search, still extending and expanding. There's I think going to be more and more retailers monetizing their on-site search in the years ahead, on the model of Amazon, and sort of inspired by that model of the original Google AdWords back in the days. But there are these other kind of horizons ahead. Mm-hmm. I just kind of a sidebar, like, I'm wondering how you find it, because ironically, as a consumer, I'm not that satisfied with Amazon search. Like, I go in there and, for example, I'll search let's just say I search for a bookshelf of certain dimensions or a certain color or something like that. There's not a lot of product filtering options in there, and it's at the point there are so many ads in there, which sometimes overrule the relevance. I mean, do you feel that advertising has hurt the customer experience, or how do you see something like that?
I would agree to some extent. I think so, and I remember that while Amazon was adding over the past years more and more ad placements, this discussion was becoming louder and louder. Yeah, and different, places, on events, and in different blogs and so on. But so I cannot really tell how this will in the end impact or affect the customer satisfaction of Amazon users. Let's call it like this. But what we see when you just very objectively take a look at their performance data, so in terms of a business, how successful is Amazon as a retailer, we cannot really see that this is hurting Amazon at all. So you can very transparently look into the investors report they are publishing, and you can take a look at what are they generating, first party sales, what revenue, and what is basically generated through the marketplace. And even if we see that first-party sales is a bit stagnating at the moment, we see that the marketplace is more skyrocketing still, definitely growing a lot. And if you take this as a measure of maybe customer satisfaction, I would say Amazon is doing pretty well. They are growing above average still. even if they are gigantic.
Yeah.
And if you take this as a measure, I would say they're quite successful. And so that's what I would answer this, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think whenever you look at Amazon's growth figures, it's so important to just consider the baseline number that they're growing on top of, because it's absolutely insane. They're already so big. It's so hard to put up those growth numbers. Well, I mean, so we had a webinar together the other day, and you shared a really interesting data point about the evolution of return on ad spend, which is, for Amazon advertisers, they might be more familiar with like the cost of sale, but this is just the inverse of that. But you showed how on a quarterly basis, the return on ad spend has been developing since 2019. Could you describe that in words, since we don't have the chart in front of us? Kind of tell our listeners what you saw and how you interpreted that.
Okay, so what we take a look at is not our own data that we can also take a look at, because we also see diminishing returns in our own ad system. But our focus in our ad platform is to really improve basically the way we reduce wasted ad spend, so we don't see the effect so heavily. But if you take a look at the Amazon Investors Report, then you will see that from 2019 to now, we see a decrease of around about 40% when you take a look at the returns of Amazon advertising or Amazon ads. And I mean, it's logical in a sense that Amazon ads is growing way at higher growth rates compared to the retail business of Amazon. Both is still growing, but Amazon ads is growing way faster. It was also pushed high by obviously the Corona pandemic, but we see diminishing returns. I guess 3-4 years ago, it was straightforward that you needed to use Amazon ads, sponsored ads, to scale your business on Amazon. But now I feel also talking to players, like to brands and retailers in the market, I feel that you have to think way more about your ad efficiency, which is also, I mean, that happened with Google. We talked about that, and now it's happening with Amazon.
Yeah, I think we can draw comparisons there too to a platform like Meta, for example, or originally Facebook ads, where there was, the term gets used a lot about that is arbitrage, that it was some kind of an arbitrage where people could just acquire traffic for like disproportionately cheap. And then things changed a lot in the Meta platform as privacy changes came after iOS 14 and stuff like that. And generally people flooded into that platform, and it's not quite as simple as it used to be. Well, we see then a similar trend with Amazon where, you mentioned 40% decline over the last 3 years or so, 3-4 years. And that's, just to put in absolute figures, that was from about a ROAS of 10 to now kind of around 6, which is not that different. I pulled Google Ads ROAS data and found that it's around 5.5, let's say. So, these channels have become much more comparable, where I think Amazon used to kind of look down a bit on the efficiency of a channel like Google. But if we think of that topic earlier, that like the search engine result page inside of Amazon, there's a lot of ads on there. It feels full. It feels like the ad inventory is pretty stacked up. And then we see that returns might be diminishing. Maybe it does support that idea that the search part of Amazon is getting, increasingly saturated, increasingly competitive. So from your standpoint, I know you're also really interested in Amazon DSP. We're talking about that as maybe what's next. And I think that kind of data does support the case for DSP as being a relatively untapped opportunity, kind of the next opportunity in Amazon ads. Could you talk to us about Amazon DSP?
Yeah, absolutely. That's my favorite topic at the moment. And
cool.
I think there are good reasons for this, because the Amazon DSP is not easily accessible. It's only accessible through agency partners like us. But it is the hidden gem, I would say, if you think about Amazon ads. So we started working with the DSP, I don't remember exactly, maybe in 2019. And back then, the DSP was more something that advertisers used every now and then for specific, more, I would say, marketing projects. Like I want to launch a new product and I'm adding DSP to it to get higher reach, for the higher visibility for the product, because with the Amazon DSP, you are not only advertising on Amazon sites, you are also, you basically, it's a demand side platform. It's a programmatic approach. Yeah? So you can go anywhere to any site in the internet, basically, with your ads. And so one typical project was I want to push and complete a new product, and the second was I have a deal, and I just want to bring more traffic to my deal on a high season, in a high season time. So I think over the past years it started to change a bit. We see way more always on campaign setups now. So we definitely always recommend to start with sponsored ads, because you can identify the products that work well, have good conversion rates, that have a good retail readiness, and so on. And then you basically test this also with the DSP and move let's say the initial project of testing a product, if that works out fine, to an always on setup. This is what we've seen over the past years. And I think that the next big thing will be DSP link out campaigns, because Amazon, they are struggling internally also. Are they a retailer or are they some kind of an ad platform? But over the past years, it became pretty obvious that they focus on becoming a real ad platform. And that means they are opening up in terms of KPIs and but also in terms of giving the Amazon audiences to advertisers, also for link out campaigns. And there's a great opportunity opening up at the moment, because you can make use of Amazon audience insights, or the Amazon audience attributes, and you can use it for link out campaigns that bring the traffic to your store. So how we see it in the end is you should work with Amazon, because they are the gigantic player in the e-commerce to secure your baseline sales and revenue. But you should also work on a maybe longer term roadmap to also sell directly to consumers through your own website or through your own store. And there, the Amazon DSP link out campaign topic is one of the hot things you should take a look at in the future.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down for us. I think that's so interesting, that movement from this very like kind of campaign oriented or flight based spending on DSP toward these always on campaigns. It's something that I don't know, I've advocated for in Google programmatic as well, because there's still like a very much a flight based or campaign based approach there, and I think that there's just more of an opportunity there for some always on activity there. But it's sort of some legacy stuff maybe about how budgets are structured, and I'm glad to see though that's kind of taking hold in Amazon, and yeah, these link out campaigns, that's really cool. I mean, one thing we were talking about in the webinar the other day was like, you know, we had brainstormed a bit before that. We kind of came up with this sort of framework, like a quadrant analysis, for discussing like the traffic sources and then the conversion location. So maybe you could introduce that framework and like where DSP is situated there, compared to, for example, or like the different DSP flavors that are out there.
Yeah, really happy to do that, even if it was, I would say, our common brain power in the end. So what we simply did is we wanted to come up with a very easy framework on how to use, let's say, Google and Amazon ads, and combine it with the conversion location. So where do you convert where do you win your customers or make the revenue in the end? So, and the conversion location might be either Amazon or it might be your own website or store. And basically the traffic source, as I said before, can be Amazon ads or Google ads, for example, but you can add any other ad channel as well. And the basic idea is you have Amazon as your baseline revenue driver. and you have, on the other hand, your store to basically win the customer relationship over the long run. And so owning a customer relationship is very powerful if you think about a customer lifetime approach. And this is a very strategic setup that you should definitely have both setups at hand. So your baseline revenue secured on Amazon, and you should have your own store, your direct-to-consumer strategy in place as well. And we feel that there are 4 quadrants. So one quadrant is you are basically on Amazon. You're selling on Amazon, and you're getting the traffic through sponsored ads, so through Amazon ads, sponsored ads, and so the search ads basically. And this is the one of the quadrants. Then you have another quadrant. You're using Amazon ads, the DSP, but you're using it for link out purposes with linked out campaigns. And you're directing the traffic to your website or to your store, and there you're basically converting the traffic. And then you have 2 other quadrants. One is basically bringing traffic through an ad platform like Google to Amazon, so drive to Amazon in the end. This is a quadrant that is, more left for the experts, I would say. Because it's quite a complex setup. And Mike, you can talk more about that. And there is the other quadrant that's left. It's using Google Ads to bring traffic to your own website and store and convert it there.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. And that's, Amazon was always kind of this like distribution channel and generating kind of sales and orders, but I love this link out campaign for also then becoming, an audience targeting and actually a customer acquisition channel, which I think is so exciting. And that was always, Google was always really clear about that they want to send traffic to your web shop. And that's why one of the reasons that they proved so popular and grew so fast. And, they tried to kind of also own the transaction. On the other hand, they tried with marketplace-like programs, or they introduced a buy box where people could just check out right on Google. It was called Buy on Google. And they recently they're winding that program down. This is not a popular opinion. No one agrees with me, but I still think we haven't seen the last of that. I think that it's still too attractive, and they'll try again in one form or another.
I agree. Yep.
And I think I've probably said before on this podcast, but I think that they'll use their new generative search offering to maybe try to find a foothold there. But anyway, this drive to Amazon thing that you mentioned is quite complicated, where you can use Google Ads to drive traffic to your Amazon store. And it's just so complicated because Amazon themselves are very dominant in the Google auctions. And they advertise both on their own behalf as a retailer, and they advertise on the behalf of sellers as well. And so it's just quite thorny because you end up potentially competing head to head with, I can only estimate this, but I see all the evidence to me points that Amazon is the single largest spender on Google Shopping. I cannot see a case that anyone else is spending more. And you're potentially, if they're advertising on your behalf, then there's like a cannibalism question that comes to mind. So that's definitely a thorny area. At any rate, I do like that framework of just traffic source and conversion location for understanding these channels or tactics. Well, I still got you. I want to touch on a couple more topics. Because earlier you mentioned that like your retail readiness is going to be important in deciding what to advertise. So maybe we can come back to that. What is retail readiness? Why is it so important?
Retail readiness is, I guess, a term that is very basically related to selling on Amazon, I feel, yeah. Even if I would say it's also, it's a general concept that is quite important in the entire e-commerce industry. So in the end, it's about being ready for potential consumers to also make a purchase decision and decide to go with your product offering. And it means that there are some components of it. So one is, we talked about that already before. So one is the price. So if you're a retailer, you need to have an attractive price. If you're a brand, there's also a competitor peer group of products, and you also need to be somehow competitive with your price offering. And at the same time, it's about basically lots of communication aspects. So it's about the content of a product. So this needs to be, you need to talk about your product, you need to describe it properly, you need to have images and potentially also video in place. You might also want to talk about your brand. So explain why your product is superior compared to another one, which is feature-wise almost the same, but you might distinguish yourself with your brand mission, vision, whatsoever. And there's another very important aspect, especially if we talk about Amazon, and that's the reviews and ratings. So you all know that all of the products on Amazon have typically reviews and ratings. And if you want to make a decision between one or the other, you might also read these ratings and make your decision based on what other people tell about the product.
Yeah, thanks for unpacking that for us. And speaking of buy on Google, like there's sort of a Google equivalent here, because in the buy on Google program, they were looking at similar factors, and it could positively influence your chance of getting the buy box in the buy on Google program, which was commission free. That was kind of their way to attack Amazon there, but it didn't work. People just didn't take the offer up anyway. But they're taking those same factors, similar to retail readiness, and now it's a US only currently, but they've introduced something in the Merchant Center called a scorecard, which again, it's motivating you to work on these things, because comparatively, if we look at the customer experience of Google Shopping, it's not great. Well, there's two elements. There's the shopping tab, which is perhaps a bit of a different story, although and then there's the search engine result page where these product listings pop up. But it's with Amazon, you know what you're in for. You're expecting good prices, you're expecting informative product pages and all this kind of stuff, and you've got this social proof that and informative consumer peer information in the form of reviews and ratings. And with Google, that's the point of retail readiness, right? That's a big part of it, is to support that customer experience. And with Google, that's why they're also trying, I think, now to incentivize that a bit, so that they can improve their customer experience and compete a bit more with Amazon. Because as you mentioned earlier, Amazon very dominant in product search. A lot of product search is starting there, and that hurts Google, because ultimately there are, I don't know, trillions probably of searches running through Google, but they're okay. They make money on service related search queries as well. Any kind of commercial query they can make money on, but product search is a very important category for them. So now you've got your retail readiness covered. Like, how can you get a little more advanced? Like, what's your view on product segmentation? This is something we kind of wanted to talk about on the webinar, but we didn't have time. So maybe you could explain to us your approach to product segmentation.
We were running out of time there. What's the difference maybe between Amazon ads or running ads on Amazon and Google? So Google is using your feed, your product feed, so you can basically upload all of your products quite easily. And in Amazon, you have to create campaigns. Yes, there are ways of also adding lots of products to a campaign, but we would not really recommend it. So our setup is typically you have a campaign for a specific product, and there are lots of good reasons behind, but let's not discuss the details here. So in the end, it means that you have to think about what products do you want to really advertise, and there's an approach used by Amazon itself, and they're recommending this, and lots of also Amazon ads customers are using it now and adapting to it. And this is a BCG framework in the end, which is taking a look at basically what is the product life cycle at the moment, and how many conversions do you generate with the product. So you're ending up at a typical 2-dimensional, but 4-quadrant BCG metrics. and you then simply decide on, is it a new product? Is it an old product? Is this more maybe in the cash cow section? Is it more in the stars section? Or if it's a completely new product without any conversions, do you want to test it out as a question mark in the end? And we like that approach because you can quite easily segment your product catalog into these 4 quadrants in the end, and then make decisions for your advertising campaign setup. So for example, let's talk about just one quadrant, and this is the question mark quadrant. So you have, for example, a new products. You've currently launched a set of products, and obviously there are pretty low conversions happening at the moment. And then you basically want to know, is this a real star, or is this in the end more a poor dog product? And you can use Amazon ads to very quickly learn how scalable this product is. So you will start investing some ads into these products. You quickly get a return, or see how is basically the conversion rate behaving. And after you've done the basics right, the basic campaign optimization, you will pretty quickly see in what quadrant can you bring the products to. So is it really a star, and you can now try to make it a cash cow in the future, or is it more a poor dog and you simply stop advertising, just sell it off? And that's how we use a product segmentation at Metoda.
Yeah, thanks. There are similar kind of adaptations of the BCG matrix that we see around in Google Ads, and I don't know. That's our second quadrant analysis of the episode, so we'll probably leave it there for our poor listeners. But, yeah. But I mean, I guess a little mini call to action. I just, I love quadrant analysis. You can really quickly, you can apply these type of analyses to so many topics. And I just also encourage people to think of like a Z dimension, not just on this X and Y axis, but also as multi-dimensional as possible without over-engineering things. But let's see, while I've still got you, we got a bit more time, and we'll relieve our poor listeners of any more quadrant analyses. So that's on the forbidden list. Not allowed to mention anymore.
Okay, fine.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. We were talking a bit about key dates, like also peak season in Q4, but also other key dates like Prime Day in this webinar. And you were discussing 3 patterns that you see in regards to bid and budget on these key promotional dates. So maybe you could unpack those for us.
Yeah, of course. So what we do, as we're really collecting lots of data on these key dates, we also run types of analysis where we monitor a huge set of keywords on an hourly basis, and just take a look at what products and brands are visible at what time throughout the day. And what we see as typical patterns is either in the low, you have a low budget at hand, but you set wrong bids and too high bids, obviously. And the typical pattern is that you are active early in the morning, visible early in the morning with your ads, and then your visibility is simply decreasing throughout the day, which is straightforward. Yeah. So you're running simply out of budget. And this is the first pattern. The second pattern that we see is you have a very high budget. So basically you can almost not spend it throughout the day. So you will see an increase in visibility throughout the day, and then it will go down basically with declining traffic at some point in the day. And there's the third pattern, which is really important to know about, is you have a low budget, but you set the right bid accordingly. And this is a pattern. I mean, if you have a low budget, you should try to really find a good bid, or the right bid, the best bid that you can set, especially on deal days. And then you will, in the beginning of the day, not be very visible, but your visibility will increase throughout the day, and potentially also increase into the evening times, which is the most efficient setup if you have low budgets.
Yeah, we see similar things on dates like Black Friday. Although at this point, the bidding question in Google has mostly been overtaken by Google. Large majority of advertisers are using this fully automated bidding from Google. So it's a bit of a different topic, but it's just so important to just be aware and be on it. And because, you can easily look at your historical data and just kind of, report that hourly for past seasonal events and just heat map that to make it more visible. And you'll see where the traffic was, where conversion rates were, like when is the day really hot, and you just got to make sure that you're able to be present there. Let's see, we've got time for 1-2 more maybe. So I know you've got a hard stop at the hour. One more really great insight you shared. You've seen, among many, you've seen interesting shifts in branded and generic search around these peak dates. So could you explain that to us?
Yes, I think that's also very logical behavior of consumers. So around peak days, what we see is people on peak times search more for brand names versus compared to organic terms. And I think that's quite logical because around peak times, there's high discounts, there's all these deals, and people simply look for bargains in the market. So the search behavior simply changes. We also see that people more tend to look for higher priced products in these days. And I think that also makes sense. So for brands, it in the end means, so there's maybe two takeaways out of this. So first of all, for brands, they should really take care that they are visible on their branded terms. And for competitors, it means they could think about using the traffic from their competition to leverage their own traffic.
Good tips. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting point about people kind of shopping upwards or buying higher ticket items. I mean, I guess, you're looking for these discounts, and that promotional period will kind of increase your purchasing power. And we also saw that borne out with data around the average order value. The average order values are going up on Black Friday as an example, compared to every other Friday. But got time for one more, I think. So I want to ask you to close it out. Tell us a bit about what's next. What do you see coming up in digital marketing, or which trends are you watching, or anything that you feel is overhyped right now?
Okay, that's a great question to conclude this session. Okay, so I talked about that really a lot today. So I think one of the really trends to watch is DSP link out. Mm-hmm. I feel most of businesses out there don't even know that this is possible. So using the Amazon audience to own in the end a customer in your own store or website. What is overhyped? I think there's another quite interesting topic. We touched on that very shortly in the webinar, and this is basically social selling. So I would potentially agree to what you said yesterday, that social selling, in the sense that the conversion location is in the social channel, is maybe a bit overhyped. I'm not really sure if that's doable. So we see Google struggling with being the conversion location. And if Google struggles, and I think that's really smart people behind, then I doubt that the social media channels will have an easier time to do so. But what I feel is, there's definitely a third. So let's say we have Google as the real big search channel. Then we have Amazon as the big retail channel, which is now also offering ads. And I think social media in general is quite interesting. So influencer marketing will be quite an interesting topic also in the future. And this is a mix of at least these three channels that consumer brands should have on their radar for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for walking us through those. And yeah, I totally agree with what you've said about DSP, or this link out option, having that power of Amazon audiences and bringing the traffic to your website. It just seems super attractive. So pity that not enough people know about it, and hopefully more do now. Before I let you go, any shout outs or anything like that?
I'm looking forward to the next session we have together, Mike. It was really a blast, the webinar yesterday and also this talk today. I'm looking forward maybe to have a catch up in half a year or a year and see how all of our ideas have now materialized.
Cool. We'll have to put that in the calendars. And Stefan, where can we find you online?
Obviously on LinkedIn. So me personally. And the other touch point is metoda.com. Just reach out to us. Happy to discuss trends, topics, or simply work together with any of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for your time, Stefan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you too, Mike. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for listening to Growing E-commerce. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing it with coworkers, friends, or within your professional network. We really appreciate it. This podcast is produced by Smarter E-commerce, also known as SMEC. To learn more, visit smarter-ecommerce.com.